Okay, we should be ready.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Carmel Clay Public Library Board of Trustees meeting, July 28th, 2025. This meeting will be live streamed. So we have a agenda and can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
We have a first from Ann Poindexter,
A second.
second from Rosie Folks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Agenda passes. And before we get into our consent agenda, we have Mike Reuter here to give us our annual fiscal update, and there's been a lot. So this should be a very eventful meeting here. We'll probably learn a lot of what's going on. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting year. Probably the wildest legislative session I've been through, and I've been around a while. And it started early in the session. It started before the session, but just to share a few thoughts on that whole session. About late January, I was talking to the director for the county association. His name is David Bodorf, and he's been around a while too. And I was saying, David, I don't know about you, but I said, it feels like a train coming through and there's no slowing it down or changing directions. And his response back to me was interesting in that he said, it feels like the last week of the session down here and it's the end of January. There was just so much going on in this legislative session, just very, very active.
And that intensity carried through the whole.
The entire time. And I would say, I would describe it as there was infighting, and disagreement among even those that might be of similar party. And to kind of give you a big picture summary of all that, the first Senate bill that came out was really Governor Braun's proposal. When he was running his campaign, he had committed to reducing property taxes. And that version was pretty deep and pretty, was going to be pretty devastating to a lot of units of government. And so I know that there were senators that were meeting on a very regular basis, trying to kind of talk them down from that proposal. Ultimately, then the Senate came out with their proposal, and their proposal was not necessarily to roll property taxes back, but it was to limit future revenue. And how they were going to do that was by not using the 6-year non-farm personal income factor as the measure. They were going to give you 0 increase in your levy in 26, 1%, 27, and then 2%, and then go back to a form of the non-farm personal income factor. And so that was painful. And with an asterisk on both of those, neither of those had replacement revenue in them. So in other words, it was a pure cut. It was not, there was no way to raise something else to make up for it. And so those were the first two opening shots. And Jeff Thompson on the House side had his own proposal that he had spent. He obviously had spent a lot of time thinking about how to reduce property tax. And so Jeff's a math guy, and he came up with a proposal that's pretty complicated. It's becoming clearer how that's going to work, but it was pretty complicated in the mechanisms of it. But that really wasn't even enough, I don't believe, for the governor in what Jeff was trying to do by lowering assessments. And then that's when suddenly out of nowhere, they came up with a property tax credit, different than circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is something when you get to 1% of your home value, you stop paying unless there's a referendum, then that goes on top. This is after that calculation. So basically you calculate the tax bills, and this is truly a credit, and it's 10% of the tax bill or up to $300. Well, obviously in a community like Carmel, or for the most part anywhere in Hamilton County, for the most part, the $300 cap is going to be basically what most people will see. And so that will be determined by taxing district, and you'll lose in proportion to that, whatever that that you will not collect from property tax. But so the quick math on it is, just to give you an idea, $300,000 house, $300, 1%'s 3,000, they would get 2,700. They'd be paying $2,700 in tax. So that, I believe, is how they got the governor to agree to that. And then it went very quickly. There was a lot of angst. And then all of a sudden it just went boom, boom, no committee hearing, and the governor signed it. And it was shortly thereafter, as soon as the governor signed it, they were trying to make changes to it in what they call a DLGF bill, Department of Local Government Finance bill. And one of the big changes there is as part of Senate Bill 1, they were reducing business personal property tax. And they were basically saying that anything less than $1 million would not be reported. And then year 27 would be 2 million. They then realized that the mechanics of that weren't going to work because everybody's already filed their returns and everybody'd have to refile. And so they really couldn't make that work. And so they just postponed that. They said, okay, we're not changing. Right now it's $80,000. Anything $80,000 less doesn't get reported. They basically said, all right, we're going to keep it at $80,000 for the first year. And then in 2027, anything less than $2 million will not get reported. So that was something they were already working on to make work. But there are other things that are still being found, as we go through this process. I work with several clients. I can only tell you that everyone is unique in how it's impacting them. You're being impacted by a lit decision, not so much probably on the property tax side. You're going to lose a little bit on the property tax side, but nothing like some others are going to lose. The schools did not do well because all this is about property tax reduction and assessments going down. And a school referendum rate is not going to generate the amount of money it has because they're going to be taxing the homeowner less. And going back to that quick math, $300,000 home, they've now scheduled what's called the homestead credit to go from its current level of 37.5% to 66.7% by year 2031. So by that year, that $300,000 house will now only be paying on a third of the value. So that they will only be taxing $100,000. So when you have a fixed referendum rate and you start losing all that assessed valuation, schools that have referendums will not be collecting the same amount of money that they have collected in the past. So I'm hearing lots of conversations, schools are going to have to rerun them, and because they're not going to generate the same amount of money. And some are talking about 2026 and some are talking 2028 because now it has to be on a municipal election. And so that's different as well, or a general election. I shouldn't say municipal, a general election. And so the schools are trying to figure that out because going in 26, they're going to have to ask for even a higher rate because the assessed valuation is going to continue to decline between now and 2031. So it'll be confusing to the taxpayers. Why are you asking me for this rate when you only need this rate? And so a lower rate, and that rate would have to go up over time. Anyway, that's school business.
Higher rate, less dollars.
Yeah. I mean, basically, you're going to have to start talking about the levy from the school standpoint. They're going to have to start saying, this is the levy we need. And then this is what we expect that rate to be in 2031, and explain to the community how much more each year they're asking that levy to be. Now, I will tell you, there have been some schools successfully do this over the years. Speedway is actually one. They have Speedway schools for many years has asked for a much higher rate than what they've ever collected. And so you got to, does your community trust you to do that? So,
Does that mean they're hitting circuit breaker?
no, so referendums go out and above the circuit breaker.
Okay, yeah.
So it's just purely the loss of revenue
So
to
what's their
schools.
strategy asking for the higher rate?
Well, that way they can raise that rate as that assessed valuation goes down versus running a referendum
I see.
more frequently. So if they're going out in 26, they want to plan through 2031 what that rate needs to be,
So they're gonna ask for a 2031 rate and 2026.
but not collect it.
Let's hold on to
Till
it.
they
But
need it.
yeah, until they need it. And so that will be confusing to taxpayers. So, and so I think I've even said that said this statement to this group before. The only fair tax is the one someone else pays. And that's what's happening. We got all this movement of farmers are doing really well in this session. They got lower per acre assessments. They got a new deduction that's never been there before. Rental property and farmers now will start with a 6% deduction this year and go to 33%. So another place where you're losing assessed valuation, you're losing business personal property, you're losing home values, you're losing the apartments, and farm ground's not impacting you too much, but so if you're a rural community, that's a big thing, right? So that's where I get back to that comment. It depends on the makeup. And in addition to that, then they did a major revamp on local option income tax, and that is where you're going to be impacted. And we're going to spend some time tonight talking about that, kind of giving you some idea what that might look like when and if that gets kicked in. So right now in Hamilton County, there is a 1.1 rate for local option income tax. A tenth of that, 1.1, is set aside for the E911 system, basically, operates the emergency systems. The rest of that 1% then is distributed to all the units within the county except schools. Schools don't get any of that, based on property tax levy. And that has actually worked very well for you for a number of years. And some of this goes back many years, like to 1973, when they first came out with local option income taxes. They decided back then that it would be distributed on property tax. But over time, it's created weird results. It's 50 years old. It's created winners and losers in that. And so the revamp now is, oh, also, this is actually pretty big because this is going to impact you. In the past, in Hamilton County, because we were originally called a COA county, in the past, we have what's called a lit council, and that lit council gets a portion of votes based on population. And so not the libraries don't get a vote, but the municipalities and the counties controlled that. They were the lit council. That goes away in 2027. There will no longer be lit councils. It will be the county council that will control most of the rate. And then the municipalities will have their own rate. And so just to kind of give you some quick math on that, you will be, the library and the other libraries will be dependent on what the county council is willing to adopt for you for your rate. Bob mentioned this a while ago, is there's also provision there that I think it is 2030 or 31 where you have to do it annually even. They have to adopt it annually. That's not good practice because that doesn't create a lot of stability if someone's issuing bonds against that revenue source. That might get fixed. We'll see. Time will tell on that. But the county council will decide that. And so they don't have to decide that until after July 1, 27 and before October 1, 27. So that has to be the decision because the revenue changes in 28. So for 26 and 27, pretty much status quo, way things have been flowing.
But in 27, we will be asking
Yes,
the council
yes.
set a rate.
Yeah, I would
for
guess
libraries.
early January 27, that conversation will start pretty heavy.
And that's, I think, a big problem with it is they don't have to set a rate at all. So we could just lose half, that portion of our funding. We could lose all of our lit funding. I mean, technically. Now, we could say it's maybe not likely that Hamilton County Council would do that, but no one could say, nobody can say what they're going to decide in 2027. There's even an election next year, so there could even be new council members. So it's really impossible to say. So our
Yep.
ability to plan is frozen because of that.
I would say as a general statement, I think the Hamilton County Council will be friendly to the libraries in Hamilton County. To what extent are they gonna be able to adopt? Because there's a limit of how much they can even adopt for you. And that's 0.05. 0.05 actually generates more money than what's being distributed to libraries right now. But it's the allocation of it is going to affect you. But before I get to that, let me circle back to the rates. So Hamilton County will be responsible for adopting their own lit rate to make up their own dollars. And they're about 28% right now. So they would just need to adopt a rate of 0.28%. They would need to adopt 0.1% for the public safety or E911 system. And then they would have to decide for libraries, how much of the 0.05 do they want to collect? And then they have to decide how much of the 0.05 for townships that they want to collect. And there's also a provision that allows the county council to adopt up to 0.4% for fire and EMS. That doesn't exist right now in our county. But there's going to be some, there's going to be some firefighters kind of, probably, and I don't know. I really don't know how that's going to play out. It might depend on the fire department. Probably lobbying the county council to adopt something for that.
Beyond the county council.
Yeah, so that one could become more political than yours, actually, in my opinion, the library is that fire rate. And some of that lobbying has already started, they're thinking about that. So
And the fire rate is what?
it can be up to 0.4. Up to 0.4. That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
That's a lot of money. In Hamilton County, it's a lot of money.
to be distributed.
It actually gets distributed based on area of coverage and population. That's a little bit different. The libraries, this is the wild card that's going to impact you. It is distributed based on population. I'm going to show you some numbers or some projections on that.
So if this is voted in January it comes into play January 2027 is when it's voted and decided.
Excuse me, it's actually the summer after July 1, 27, but the lobbying for the library would need to start in January of 27 so that they understand what your needs are by the time they get ready to adopt it.
Okay, so this would be for funds that were distributed in 2028.
No, this would be for dollars that will then be collected in 2028
Okay.
under this new lit rate structure.
Okay.
And then allocated to the libraries based on population, not levy,
Okay.
as it's currently distributed based on levy. And it would go to population. And I'm going to show you some numbers. You're going to get hurt with that model. Your property tax levy has been stronger. And if you think back to 1973, you guys, Carmel existed. There was a base to start from. And so that basis has grown faster than the others. And so across the state, there's winners and losers in that model. And that's where even the library association may find themselves in conflict because there's going to be winners in libraries and there's going to be losers in that. And so
I think a lot of small towns are in trouble because of this.
yeah. Yeah, so then the municipalities, this is the new piece. And actually, I think the city of Carmel's, I think they're good with it. I know Fishers is good with it and Noblesville, all the mayors seem to be okay with this. They now have control of their own lit rate. That's a big change. Before they had to rely on another community to join with them to raise the rate or change the rate. And so the whole issue between the allocation between Carmel and Fishers, that just goes away. That's no longer an issue because each community will adopt their own rate. And this is not my term. This is a term that's been used, not my term, and it's kind of crude, but it's kind of the whatever you eat, whatever you kill, you eat. That's their term, not mine. So that's how they're approaching that is whatever you collect,
Right.
is what you get. And so you will probably see different rates, between municipalities, even within the county. I don't know, maybe they'll all get together and say, all right, what can we all live with together? Maybe they will all agree, but that,
They don't
yeah,
have to,
That's-
though.
they don't have to. That's right. Because what's generated an income here versus what's generating income at Nobles is going to be two different things. Same rate Nobles is not going to generate, but they may need, so they may have to have a higher rate. So I would say your city probably likes this new model. You get hurt in this model. Clay Township actually may not like it perfectly. They may actually like it okay because they were getting ready to lose a lot of lit because they have an old bond paying off. And they were going to lose most of their lit. And so that they may be okay with that. So again, winners and losers in all this, in all these changes.
And what's the maximum rate for the cities to adopt?
1.2%.
1.2.
And so the county has the ability to adopt up to 1.2% plus these other lits that I described. And then the cities have up to 1.2. That's even been a kind of a touch point for the cities because some of the cities are saying, wait, the county doesn't need 1.2. I mean, if you think about it, right now they're collecting 0.38 in Hamilton County with the PSAP rate and what they're collecting. So they may not need that high of a rate. But, then when you put the 0.4 on it, if they were to adopt that for fire and EMS, but that, it might be association against association at that point. So that's probably for you is probably your biggest wild card hanging out there in 2028 is what will, but I mentioned this on, not everyone probably heard this early on, but Jeff Thompson is saying that there's likely going to be changes in the next session. But I get the impression they're going to be more of a tweak than a substantial change. Like we're going to get rid of the system. It's just not going to work.
So they're gonna make some tweaks.
I get the impression it's going to be, the system is in place. Now, do we need to adjust for not having to adopt a lit rate every year? Or do we need to change the form? You might win. They might say, well, we're going to change the formula some so it doesn't completely turn the apple cart over and start over with instead of just being population, it might be maybe a combination of some population, kind of like I described for the fire and EMS, they're using population and service area. They might figure some other formula out for libraries.
Well, if they're doing that for them, maybe we could just ask for that to be the model for libraries too.
Yeah, so obviously for fire and EMS, the reason they're using area is because of run times and things like that. That'd be a little different for a library.
But they're pretty strict on service areas. I mean, it's very well defined in the state, so
Yeah.
there's a rationale for it.
Yeah. And then you have there are counties that have townships within them that won't have a lit rate, but have to pay it because it's a countywide library rate. They don't have libraries.
Yeah.
And so that an example is Madison County. There's a couple of townships there that don't have
So
libraries.
to just get a new tax and no library for it?
That's right. Yeah, but they're on the one hand, they're kind of paying it already.
Right.
They're paying it already. But libraries like that then that do have library, they're trying to figure out, well, how can we offer them services so that they're getting something for their money, even though they may not have a library structure. Can we bring them into our fold? So lots of moving pieces.
This would
going
be a
on.
reason that in the library world that talk around county consolidation may be big next year.
So that's a great point, Bob, because there's some conspiracies out there that it isn't just about consolidating libraries. Is this a movement to squeeze everyone to force consolidation of libraries? Townships are a big target. And schools, you get into the smaller school systems.
They're gonna be,
Yeah. They're going, are they going to squeeze it that way and get there? But yeah, I mean, these are, they took a pretty complicated system before and they doubled down on it. And so we'll have another interesting session. I don't think it will be as wild as last one, but it will, it's going to be another, something to watch. I couldn't, clients were calling me and saying, well, how's this going to impact me? I can't even get my arms around what this looks like yet, It took a while to peel that onion back to see how this is all going to work. And as I said, everyone's just a little bit different. And so depends on the makeup of the unit. So
Yeah, so just a general question, because it's so complicated, how confident can we be in what this actually looks like in 2031 when it's fully implemented? I mean, there's so many variables.
yeah, so there's a group out there. I've referenced a lot of clients to them. I wouldn't tell you that you should do this yet. But there's a group out there called Policy Analytics, and they have a model they created years ago, and they're well respected by the legislators. I think they actually do some work for them. They have a parcel by parcel analysis that they do, and they've been running a lot of models of how this plays out. And so I've seen some of those now, and there's some similarities within Hamilton County in some of those numbers. And so they're doing a pretty good job at trying to forecast that. I think one of the things that's being discovered, this thing's designed to raise tax rates. Sounds crazy, right? It's designed to raise tax rates, but one thing that might slow it down a little bit is how quickly those rates are going to rise. When you start cutting that assessed valuation that hard, tax rates are going to rise quite a bit, pretty quickly. That might, will that cause them to react? Now, I've also said this to my Hamilton County clients. Hamilton County has strong income and we have strong property values. If we can't survive this, you can only imagine what's going to happen across the state. So, not to be mean, but there are going to be a lot of other units hit the wall way before you hit the wall. And in my thought process is that if that happens, that will cause reaction at the legislative level. That, or maybe it won't. Maybe it'll say, well, here's our company, you need to consolidate, you'll start to see that when that happens. And there are some units that get slammed that are there. One's even a growing unit I saw that just gets really damaged by this new Senate Bill 1. So, what time will tell with it. I will tell you as a big picture, 26 doesn't look much different than 25. Your budget, your whole budget process for the most part. You're not going to have anything substantial that you're going to have to worry about in 26. It's going to be for the most part, because all we're doing in 26 is going from a 37.5% supplemental deduction to 40%. That's not a big change. So that's manageable. We can get through that. The credit is something new, but even that, your revenues are so strong, we can absorb the credit loss. So that's a long session in a nutshell of what happened, but it was pretty rough. And here we are trying to now see what the fallout is, little by little. So by August 1, I unfortunately don't have this for you today, but by August 1, the counties are supposed to certify assessed valuations. It's going to be hard for them to hit that date because of all these changes. They got to make obviously computer changes. So that will be kind of our first point that we'll see, the first reaction to that. And then the next spring, when what's called the abstract is calculated and tax bills are computed, then we'll know our real loss of this new credit. And that circuit breaker has always been difficult to estimate, but the credit actually, once we know that first number, we will be able to dial that in, because if somebody's at $300, they're probably going to be at $300 forever, right? And so it's not going to be, the only way it grows is if you have more homesteads, you have more people move in, then the number could grow. but not, it's not gonna grow substantially. That'd be kind of based on building permits, you know, how many new houses you're bringing in. So, it'll play out in 26, you're fine, you know, you don't need to. You're in a position, you do not have to take a knee-jerk reaction to anything. There are gonna be some units that have to react and quick, sooner than later. And then you're not one of those, so you're in a strong cash position and you're gonna be able to, you're gonna be able to ride this out a while. But the big one for you really is the lit conversation that we will have to have. But maybe the whole lit system that they came up with is not quite baked enough to know, when I say that baked enough, that is completely thought out yet how that works, because it's also more of a real-time lit model versus they collect money and then distribute it later. This goes to more of a real-time model, and I'm not sure if Department of Revenue is ready for that. Maybe they will be, right? Department of Revenue, they gotta start collecting by county and city and town now, which
Yeah,
that's a lot of town. They
That's
just
gonna
added
be
a
big.
lot of, taxing districts. Now, one last thing, and then we'll move on, is if you're 3,500 or less population as a town, the county can adopt a rate for you. They don't have the ability to even raise the 1.2%. And maybe that's designed, to eliminate, I don't know. So that's another little wild card out there.
Ready for your presentation?
I am, thank
Let me
you.
just share.
Any
the screen.
questions though before I
It
move
was a
on?
lot.
Yeah, a lot of moving.
Yeah, thank you. Good
Yeah.
summary.
Thank you. So, EJ's taken the fiscal plan. I think you have the fiscal plan and the PowerPoint, or did
No,
they
they
just
just
say?
have the fiscal
Okay,
plan, but the
okay.
page numbers are referenced.
Okay, so thank you, EJ. Has converted some of these into PowerPoint for me. So this is, you've heard me say this before, for many years in Indiana, the idea of property tax was to tie it to income tax. Like we don't want property taxes increasing faster than income. And we lived by that model for many years. And so it was a 6-year rolling average. In my opinion, that was a little too long of an average, but that's what they did. And so this top line right here reflects that rolling average. And you can see it was increasing. It was increasing to these higher levels. And they didn't like that because property taxes were going up, because homes values were going up. And they said, pause, we're not going to allow them to collect that kind of money. We're stepping away from the income tax. And the first 2 years, they actually wrote a conditional statement here in these 2 years, and basically said, you're going to calculate the 6-year non-farm personal income factor like you always have, and then you're going to apply 80%. But if that's still higher than 4%, you're still going to be capped at 4%. And so those were those 2 years. And then this year, they just capped it. They just said, we're capping it. But up until 23, we were collecting what that real average was generating. But now you can see where they were deviating away from that. So you might say, well, how is this? We collected 4% more tax, but my taxes went up 20%. What happened there? Well, what happened is homeowners' properties were going up very rapidly in that period of time, but commercial was not. And so the mix changed. The more burden was pushed to homeowners because those values rose quicker. You were actually only collecting 4% more. Most units of government only collected 4% more, but it didn't feel like that to the homeowners. They're like, what are you doing with all that money? And that's caused this political reaction to it. And so libraries as a group, for the most part, their tax rates did what they were supposed to do. They went down. They had those higher property values and tax rates went down. In libraries, because of how they're made up, you can't just rush out and issue a debt to keep the tax rate flat. It's a longer process to do that. And so where you had counties, cities, towns, schools, issuing debt to manage to a tax rate. And that was a strategy because of the whole circuit breaker model, there wasn't much of a strategy or motive to lower it. And so in that you live the good times and the bad times with that flat tax rate. That happened to be good years, they were generating so much more money. But then school referendums, that's another sore spot for them. Suddenly these AVs started growing 20%, not here 20%, but some were growing 20%. And that referendum rate was the same rate. Now suddenly they're paying 20% more to the referendum. And so that became a target. It was just everywhere. It was when they came up, I would say years ago, when they designed the whole circuit breaker system. I don't think anybody ever would have thought to run into that model, what they were running at the time. See what happens when you start increasing homeowners property taxes 20% a year. I don't think so. If this system we have has produced some strange results, and
Well, it sounds like it was inflexible,
yeah, it produces strange results. I mean, it
Yeah.
was designed and it just started doing some different things. So just so you know, that was one measure they took early on, trying to limit how much you could collect. But now you can kind of see where we've been. And then you can see like, wow, we ramped up here quite a bit in these 3 years. And that was because homeowners' values were going up so much, right? And so we actually grew more than 10% even in 25 in 24, because that's the year they went in 23. From 23 to 24, they went from 35% supplemental homestead deduction to 40. And so our AV was suppressed in 24. It actually grew more than that. But now, and this is not an exact forecast, okay? This is just a model to kind of show you what you can kind of expect. And I've kind of gleaned this from some of the studies I've seen throughout the county. Most of the schools hired policy analytics for different reasons. You're not issuing debt and you don't have a referendum. And those two things would be a major reason why you would want them, because schools need to be able to explain how much debt they're issuing, and they need to be able to explain the referendum. So it's more important, but I've seen enough of them, as I said, that this is kind of a trend I'm seeing, what's being expected that's going to happen. Local option income tax. Now, this is the old model, okay? This is the old model, and the last known year right now that we have in real collections, what we've collected is the year 2023. And that may sound strange, but if you just rewind back to April 15th this year, we were all just filing our 2024 taxes. And then it takes time for them to sort all that out, appeals and so forth, before you really know what you actually collected in a calendar year. That's a calendar year number on the left. I was disappointed in this number. I used some pretty conservative assumptions in my modeling, and it only came in at 2.78% for the county as a whole. And so that actually surprised me a bit, that it wasn't more than that. How I model this, I look at the last 10 years real dollar increase, and then assume that going forward, with the exception of this year. That 2021 was a weird year statewide, and I think it had something to do with the stimulus money and how that was pushed out through incomes. And so we produced a strange result that one year. But going forward, that's what I'm doing. I'm just looking at like, what real dollars did we increase? And then I'll use that going forward as conservative assumption. But that was aggressive this year. We didn't hit that number. What we don't know now is this will be our 2026 budget number as a county. And so I'm still using a conservative assumption there. But this number is supposed to reflect what was collected from July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. Obviously, that just ended not too long ago at the end of June. So we will know that number, or supposed to know that number, August 1. but we won't know our allocation. We won't know our allocation, our portion thereof until August 15th. And so so anyway, that wasn't great news, that it only came in that much for that particular year. Hopefully it rebounds. Now we can kind of get into like, all right, well, what's this look like? Now, this is the old model, okay? This is just taking current modeling forward. And so when you look at, let's go out here to 2028. And you get about 1.7% of the pie. And so when you look at the total county pie down here of 291 million projected for 28, you get 1.7% of it. So that's 4.8 million dollars. Okay. So keep that number in mind, because we're gonna move and show you what the new model looks like here in a minute. But you can see here something that important is 11,387,000 is what I would project that libraries would be getting in 2028 as a whole. It's two numbers to remember here. Remember the 4.8 million and remember the 11.4 million down at the bottom, the two. Because the county could say, all right, we're not going to go to the 0.05. They could just say, libraries are currently getting $11.4 million and we'll set a rate to generate 3.9% for the libraries, and then we'll let the formula distribute whatever the formula does. That would hurt you. That would hurt you more than what I'm getting ready to show you. So this is modeling. This is new in the fiscal plan. This has not been in there before. In 28, 0.05, this is best case scenario now, okay? If they were to adopt the highest rate, I'm estimating that would generate about $15 million of regular distribution at that. There's no longer special distributions at that point. And then you currently have the 2020 census is the last known number. And then you're just simply presenting it out. And so you can see here that you remember the 4.8 million number, 28 suddenly becomes 4.3 million. Now, to be honest, you could probably survive that. You could probably survive that. Could you survive without going through making some kind of adjustment if they didn't adopt the 0.05? That's where it's going to get dicey for you. That's where you're going to have to figure out, are we going to start going through cash at that point? Now, again, you are in really, really strong cash position. Okay. So you could take a hit for a while, but long-term, how's that play out?
But just to emphasize there, this is $14 million with the point of max rate.
Yes,
And what we're currently projected to get is
yes, 11.4.
11.4 million.
So yeah,
So they would have to be increasing this a lot and we would still have a loss. That's
Yeah.
the library.
Yeah.
Our library.
Yes, and Hamilton East and Westfield don't get
Would
more
get
than they.
that's
would
correct.
in the
They
old-
both, because it goes on population, and you can see Hamilton East, 180,000 people, between the four townships. And so that Hamilton East comes out, go back here, you can see where you two are actually pretty similar in amounts right here, right? You're getting pretty similar dollar amounts. And in this model,
Wow.
that's, yeah, it produces a,
Whoa.
yeah, it's a big swing for them. Yeah. But remember now, the reason it's a big swing for them, this is assuming it goes up to 0.05,
Right.
right? So
And they,
that's the thing. Will the county council say, are we willing to give the other libraries
Much more.
or do we,
But still, based on the population,
it's based on population?
you talk about winners and losers.
Yeah.
They win.
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And that's something that I would expect to see people lobbying for, maybe to soften that some, or maybe some kind of step in, or, or is there two conditional pieces to making the calculation? I don't know, whether we'll see this next session, whether or not that becomes a topic or not. But townships are similar in that sense. They're going to be based on population. But as I mentioned, Carmel Clay, or Clay Township, is getting ready to lose a lot of their lit, only because that whole park bond that was issued in '05 is now paying off. And that was part of their lit allocation, or that was part of their levy. And that goes to zero once it's paid off. And so they're on a track to lose a whole lot of money. So they might be just fine with getting 0.05 to get back on population. But that'll be a conversation. I would envision the libraries will all be together trying to have a similar message. And then the townships would probably be together to have a message of what they need. Townships obviously would have different requests. They had poor relief and fire. So, but in Clay Township, there isn't fire anymore because it's all incorporated. So even, even amongst themselves, they won't all be the same, right? So it could be the wild, wild west there.
Yeah,
Now, again, 4.8 million to 4.3 million, you could probably survive that. So, but if they cut this down to $11 million, down, then that would have a bigger impact on your finances. So this is, your history, your beginning cash balances, your revenue, your expenditures. The most important line right here shows your excess revenue over expenditures. Of course, you had 2 really good years. We transferred some money to rainy day. Here we had we spent cash because you can see our capital outlay budget was really high that year. That's part of the project that we committed to putting cash towards. And then you can see we kind of went back into a normal mode. And last year, being 24, we collected $2.9 million more than what we spent. So you've got room to absorb some of this. You transfer 2 million. This is a little bit different. You transfer 2 million to rainy day. EJ and I, through budget conversations, we're talking, would it make sense to transfer another 3 million out of your general fund? Because, to be honest, I'm not talked to the council about this, but they're probably going to need to look at your cash balances. And so, you need to think about that piece of the conversation. And so I've always said to my clients, they ask, well, what's a good cash balance? What's a cash balance that we should have? I always say, if you have 50% of your next year's property tax collections, that gets you from January 1. That's a good cash balance. A lot of people don't have that. Okay. You're very fortunate. So you're obviously well above that. Get to my notes here. I apologize. So yeah, so if it were 50%, you would only really have to have $2.6 million. And so we just think it might be more wise to go replenish the rainy day fund where you spent some dollars on the project too, and kind of rebalance that. You don't have to decide that tonight, but
Yeah.
you probably want to make the decision before the end of the year if you want to try to rebalance some of your cash balance, or if you want to truly spend some of it down. We actually have a budget much higher than what we ever spend, and that's what this negative number is. We try to factor out what we don't plan to spend. And so even this year's budget is imbalanced by $1.5 million. So that's good. And you can see going forward in the next 2 years, because the model doesn't change much, you're still in balance. Now, here's where you see it kind of tighten up, because your lit goes to this new model and you go from this 4.6 to the 4.3. And so that's when things tighten up a little bit right there.
And that's again under the assumption that they set a rate of
The highest.
the highest they could.
Yeah.
So you have to bake in some assumptions to put anything
I
there.
don't know. I do work with the county council. That's a client of mine, and I had said to him, I can kind of envision you adopting 0.05 for the libraries, and we'll see, what they ultimately decide. But I mean, there'll be obviously lots of questions before they get to that point. But
I was talking with colleague Cheryl, the director of Westfield Library, and she spoke with Ken Alexander, and he had said that they might want us library directors in the county to come talk to them about that this year, just so they kind of
Get
understand what's
introduced.
coming, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's gonna be a conversation. It's gonna be ongoing for a while yet.
Yeah, and I did want to point out on here, we've had strong interest earnings for a
Oh.
couple years now, and
Yep,
so can
thank
we
you.
rely on that in future years?
Yeah,
we've had
And
over a
unusually
million.
strong.
Yeah,
I've factored some of it out. You know, in this other revenue, you can see where it's going down.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, who knows? I mean, it could shoot down or it could go down slow. I don't know. It's not been going down very fast right now. I'm
Either
just-
way, we're going down.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal, right? The goal is, yeah, the goal is to get interest rates down. And
Right.
so, not for you, but I'm saying it
But-
as the economy,
Economy.
they're trying to get the rates down. So, any questions about your general fund? You're in a really strong cash position here, so. I want one last thing before I leave this page. So in terms of circuit breaker credit, there's a new line on here in the fiscal plan. And I put it in here separately because it's going to trend differently than the circuit breaker. The circuit breaker is going to trend differently than the new credit. So there's two different terms, credit and circuit breaker, two different things. And so I've modeled it here to be a separate line and it starts in 26, okay? So right now, the estimate is you'd lose about $237,000 to that new credit in your general fund. And so you have no way to make that revenue up. That is a true loss starting in 26. Now, this is the one I think they might correct. This is your debt fund. And as of right now, am I okay on time?
Yeah.
Don't go too long.
So,
Okay.
this is important
Okay.
stuff. so-
Okay.
We'll order pizza soon.
Okay, I'll try to, I'm not too far from the end here. So this is new in this debt fund. There we go. See this 93,105. This is a new line in the debt fund. And so I actually hope they keep this because this you can make up. If you do have a loss to the credit in the debt fund, you can raise the rate next year to make up for it. And it would be so tiny for you that you could actually make that up. I'm speculating that was a flaw, that they didn't mean for that to happen because circuit breaker loss can't be taken in the debt fund. It all hits your general fund. This might be a tweak that we don't want next spring because right now we could make up this piece of it. So if they don't, then this 93,000 goes to your general fund loss. And so that's just speculation on my part that I think that was a miss.
But we could only make it up if the county council agreed we could make it up.
Not on this.
Not on that?
Not on this.
Just the credit.
This is controlled by a 15% operating balance and you control the levy up to that.
Okay,
So this is pure property tax in this fund. So the county
Okay.
council doesn't control the property tax. They control the lit, they don't control the property tax.
got it.
What was the logic for, I mean, why give the county
So
this control?
actually, this goes back to 1973 when local option income tax was first introduced. Then it was called CAGIT, County Adjusted Gross Income Tax. And it was a county council decision to represent the whole county. And even schools were a part of that at that time. And they would take 1% and they'd take 75% of the 1% and allocate it to all the units within the county based on property tax. And even the schools then they used the other 25% for property tax replacement credit. But the county council then was really the one deciding how much property tax replacement credit they wanted. And actually, even today, if you go to Johnson County, the county council is the deciding, there is no lit council.
Okay.
It's only co-ed counties. Co-ed was introduced, I believe, in 87. And it was that new co-ed council that was formed later, much later. But there are a lot that are just county council now. So they moved everybody to that. So debt, there's not much to say. That all this is in this is a flat payment for you guys. So this is one that you might see tax rate increase in this in the future, and you're not raising the levy. You follow me on that? If this next year, you're likely to see a decline yet because it's a flat payment. If your AV goes up, this rate goes down. But if your AV truly does start to drop with all this, you can see your debt rate going up and you didn't do anything different. So. The next page is just LURF fund. This is the one we've been kind of talking about spending down. I believe we do have plans to spend this completely down at this point.
Yeah. For the
I would describe this as the old rainy day fund and leave it at that.
Yep.
It doesn't, you don't really need it anymore. The rainy day fund. So this, you would see, you saw your 2 million, you came in here in 24 and you put 900,000 in here and you'd spent some, through this period of time, you'd spent some dollars. We currently have $6.9 million budgeted that isn't being spent. And then if we move $3 million of the general fund, we're at $11.4 million. So you think about your cash balance of your general fund, you think about the cash balance of the rainy day fund. That's really strong cash balance. So one-time expenditures may not be a bad idea to spend some of that down. I don't know that we need to, that they'll start looking at, on paper, we've got it appropriated. We got $9 million of it appropriated. So they're looking at if they were trying to say, well, here's their budget, and it would look as if we don't have that much, but we know that we're not really spending that. And it truly shows up at the end of the year because the appropriation dies and it becomes available. And then here's where you can kind of see the tax rates. Oops, went too far. You can kind of see what tax rates might do if we have some growth in the AB. They might still go down a little bit this year, but then you can see what happens right there the year after. And then people on their tax bills start seeing those tax rates, like going, why are they raising their rates? Well, you're really not raising your rates. Their assessments are going down. So that will be the point of confusion. Really, starting in 27 will be the real confusing.
But the rates are gonna go up all over the state.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
and I recommended all my clients, don't, if you do play a rate game and trying to hold them flat, you're gonna be left behind. So.
You said earlier that this was designed for the rates to go
Yeah.
up, so that was part of the intention?
Yeah, I think so. And there's been some comments that Jeff Thompson is fully aware that by now in 2031, that everyone might be back at the circuit breaker, that because the tax rates will be so high. When then I got to think, well, is that actually the goal, is to get everybody, the commercials to 3%? Get the rental property 2% and homeowners to 1%? And then do you really need tax rates anymore? Is this 1, 2, 3, whatever your house is? So I don't know that. That's Mike Reuter's speculation. Okay, is that part of the goal? I don't know, but it is expected that tax rates are going up. And it's not unique to you. You will probably do better than most. So that last one's just a graph of the tax rate. So you kind of see where you've been dipping and you managed through the project. We promised no rate increases in there, and then you dipped, but now you could go right back up. This tonight is just for information. There's no requirement of you to act on anything. You have a public hearing for the budget coming up, and then you have an adoption. EJ has provided me the proposed budget, and that's what's in the fiscal plan right now. I've updated the revenue, but big asterisk, the assessed valuation is not certified in there, and the lit is not certified in here yet.
Gotcha.
So,
And you said that's Friday.
in theory.
That's what's-
Yeah.
We out there.
And I don't blame them if they don't make it. Yeah, if the county did,
Theory,
yeah.
Every legislator that voted
Has to
on
be
the Senate bill
certified.
understood it.
yeah, it's,
Wow.
yeah.
Go on.
Well, thank you, Mike. Any other questions for Mike? All right, thanks again.
My pleasure. More to come.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
My
You might.
pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mike. We have approval of the consent agenda.
That'd be nice. So we have the minutes in there from last month's board trustee meetings, the claims and warrants, the personnel policy minutes, the special meeting. the 25th and the special meeting on the 17th of June. So we have a first from Ian Poindexter,
Second.
second from John Williams, all in favor?
Aye.
No items were removed from the consent agenda, and now we have Bob's director's report.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike.
Just have one thing that I wanted to add, and just to circle back, I think we have the May and June Digital Media Lab report as part of my director's report, and they referenced that they did a time lapse video for ACE Days at the end of the year last year, which I asked them to do that. I was out sick, didn't see it in action. Beth was overseeing it, but Beth, can you talk about ACE Days for just a minute? Then I'm going to show them this video.
Save the best for last. Hi. So, I started in September 2019. I experienced my first ACE day that December. It consisted of, in the old building, we had the programming space that seated about 100. I've got the folks back there that will corroborate my story. And so we would open, because of how the school was scheduling it in the morning, there would be staff here. And the kids would come in, we'd have therapy dogs. It was pretty chill. And then Bob's going to show you what it has since transitioned into. And he asked me to talk about it a little bit because what I have seen over the past several years is it's gone from a secluded morning security heavy event with a few staff members to everybody's in the room. So I'm talking, so Lisa's in tech services, she and her team are out. Sarah's in adult services, man, they get the brunt of it. And the rest of us, including admin, are walking around as floaters. And so we have turned this into a library-wide welcoming event, working with the school. We have managed to pull some school folk over to us because I guess when they're at the school, they have to shelf read. And over here, we just ask them to walk around and be present. We've opened up all of our meeting rooms. We have video games. And Christy Walker's not here, but she alerts the public to the best of her ability. And so we have just really transitioned to try to keep in step with the high school's changing needs. And you're going to see what it looks like.
Yeah, and I think
Sped
I
up.
have some numbers here that I think you ran that between the hours of 12 to 4:30, typically we average about 900 some door count visits. On these ACE days, Tuesday, December 17th, 2,330 between those hours. Wednesday, 2,290 between those hours. Thursday, 2,218. So we have a lot of kids in here on ACE day. And I did want to show you the video that was created. So let me do that.
And you volunteer on these days, John?
No, it's convenient that Bob took the sick day.
Well, but I thought you were going to be there. You'd be a fantastic help. We could use you.
Was it better in the spring when they moved all their hours? Because they didn't have ACE like they normally do.
They actually did it the same way they did in the winter. So they were in school in the morning and then released in the wild in the afternoon.
Oh, I can't believe they all came over here after that. I thought they were at my
Well, you'll
house.
see.
30-second video. It's not long. It's a time lapse video of these 3 days.
Wow. That's what I.
There we are.
Cool.
So overall, behavior wise and
We did feel that this most recent ACE days were our best. And staff, we have it down to a it's a well-oiled machine at this point, but the behavior issues were fairly, we didn't have any behavior issues from the teens. We are seeing more behavior issues from some of the parking challenges, so.
I think it's a good idea with, just having a presence kind of prevents that. If they see someone, an adult.
We all
On
wear
me.
running shoes and our CCPL gear those 3 days.
Right. Get some exercise. Wonderful. And on the, anything else on the director reports, I noticed that we need to we should give applause to EJ for her distinguished award.
Yes.
Government Finances Officers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. Awesome, EJ. And later on in this report, you saved library $167,000.
Well, we are very excited
About
about that one. That took a long time to get that money. So,
did.
yeah,
And
we
it was a
can
lot
now
of
pay
work.
for our new solar project with that.
I feel like you get that award everywhere you go. You got it in Fishers, you got it.
I am taking it on.
Traveling award.
I mean, everywhere she goes.
But she's not going anywhere else.
Yes, there you go.
Is
There
it?
you go.
Work stays here.
Just to be clear.
I
Awesome.
do like the budget book. I feel like it's informative. And it's helpful for people to kind of know what's happening with our finances. So.
It's outstanding. I mean, you know, you deal enough with the municipalities, kind of realize that quality like that is not, you know, it's not common. So, really kudos and props to EJ and her team.
Yeah.
So.
And the communications team, I keep saying. They really do a great job.
Any more comments on the director's reports? We get a motion to receive that report?
Motion to accept the director's report. Sorry.
Rosie's
What she-
got a first from Rosie. You want to do a second, Ann?
Yes.
And second from Ann Poindexter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, do we have any trustee liaison reports today?
Nope.
Staff reports, more staff reports, nope. Library Council reports resumes in October, all right? Because the kids are way back at school. Renovation update. In there,
Well, I see our West Branch project architect, Greg Perkins, is here with us. So Greg, did you have anything you wanted to share with us?
No, not really, just trying to, hear more about what's going on at the library, mainly with my intent for coming today, but I know that we are closing in on a few last kind of housekeeping items before they get started on construction, but everything's going smooth in there. I think there's some things bouncing back and forth about finalizing permits and things like that, but, there's a walk that I talked about, food out.
okay.
Yeah. Yes, the final days of the branch are upon us and then we'll be closed for the improvements. And I've been working some at the branch and talking to people, and people have been very understanding and excited that we're making improvements. And so hopefully we'll stay on track. So far, so good. Now, I mentioned a couple of other things here at Main Library. We had a falling light and that is being addressed, and the work is now in progress. They ordered the brackets to secure them. They've received them and they're starting to be installed. I've asked them to do that after hours, so they're currently doing this work in the very early morning hours. We may work out a time where they might do an overnight, but they started with the lights that were easier to get to, but they'll need to bring in, you know, one of the larger lifts to get up to a lot of these lights. We don't have any equipment here where we can get to them. So it's not a small thing, but they are, again, it's in progress. They're getting secured. I feel much better about that.
So for the West Branch, when we reopen, you're gonna have any kind of a soft reopening?
I mean, we probably shouldn't we? Have a little, make a little celebration out of it.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll talk to our team. I wouldn't be surprised if some on our team have already thought of this, and I bet Christie in communications has given some thought to it, but I think we should and expect we will. And so our target date is, we communicated reopen after the Thanksgiving holiday.
We should do something.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, anything on the strategic planning?
Beth, do we have anything that you wanted to share?
So August fifth, the leadership team will have a meeting regarding a report based on the feedback provided by our community and staff. And thank you to all the board members who did fill out those forms. And then at the end of September, so the September board meeting, we will be offering 2 days worth of, we're calling them retreats. It's 90 minutes of work for the strategic plan. So Bob will have more details on that for you all regarding the September board meeting.
And we are asking for a longer session in September, so that you can do a strategic planning session.
Right. Will we have pizza?
We do plan on bringing in food. We won't stop.
Just want to make sure Ian's okay with pizza.
That's it.
September for your order.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ian's in. So old business, we have to approve the director's report from June. We missed that the last time.
Yeah, we need to get it approved. Didn't do it.
Yeah, John had explained to me that we neglected to vote on it last time.
Okay,
So moved.
all right. We have first man Poindexter,
Second.
second from Casey Wilson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then we have one new item, is a tuition policy update.
Now, the tuition policy, it's on the last page of your packet. We just updated this. This is a very small little tweak that I noticed after it was updated, and it is in the point number 4. And I just did this because I don't think that language reflected the intention of the board. We had a long conversation about repayment if they leave within 12 months of having a course. That was the intention of the board, but it read as it may be, a repayment may be requested. So I just thought I would change that to better, again, reflect the intention of what you were doing in the policy retweak. So that's that one small thing.
Move approval.
Okay, we have
Second.
first from Ann Poindexter, second from John Williams. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any new business? Okay, seeing no new business,